Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining me on my stream this evening. This stream is going to be slightly different in that you should hopefully be able to see an online colleague of mine by the name of Patrick Svensson, who is the original creator of the Cake Build open source project on GitHub. And I have invited Patrick onto the stream tonight to talk about another of his open source tools. So I'm going to introduce Patrick and let him explain a little bit about Spectre.Cli, and then we'll get into what we're going to do in tonight's stream.
My name is Patrick, like Gary said. I'm supposed to talk about Spectre.Cli. It's a command line parsing tool. There are like 1 million other of those, but I've tried to take a slightly different approach, and hopefully this stream will show that.
Perfect. So the idea tonight is I have a open source tool, so let's just bring this up. So I have an open source tool called Git Release Manager. So Git Release Manager is a tool that I use pretty much on every open source project that I use. The idea behind it is that it can be used to control the releases that you make as part of your GitHub project. So what I mean by that is when I have a version of Git Release Manager that's ready to ship, I create a release in GitHub. So that will be versioned with the current version number of the project, and then it will also be able to extract a set of release notes from the process that I follow. So every time I create an issue, it'll be tagged with whether it's a feature or a bug or an improvement, and then all the commits reference that issue, and then any pull requests that I make also reference that issue. So Git Release Manager is a command line tool that allows me to do all of that, to create the release, to create the release notes, and then also to upload any artifacts or assets as part of the release. So whether it's a nutmeg, whether it's an MSI, whatever the artifact is of my build, they'll go into the release. So like I said, it's a command line parsing. It's a command line tool to date, and it already parses the command line arguments that are passed into it. So as an example, if I go over here and run .NET Git Release Manager, if I can type that out in spelling mistakes, then there's an expectation that Git Release Manager will or when you're passing in the arguments, that you'll tell it what you want it to do. So there are multiple commands that you can pass in. So there's a create command, there's an add asset, a close, a publish, an export, so on and so on. So I'm already using a NuGet package to do that work. I'm not manually parsing that work, doing that work within the source code for Git Release Manager. I'm using the command line NuGet package to do that work. But when I heard that Patrick was going to be creating this Spectre.Cli, I agreed with some of the ideas behind it in terms of how it does things. So what I thought would be useful, and a shameless, selfless request on my part, was to get Patrick on the stream, to show me how to fully implement it within Git Release Manager. So the idea tonight is that we're going to strip out what we're currently doing within Git Release Manager. We're using the command line nutmeg package, and what we're going to do is we're going to add in Spectre.Cli. And if all goes to plan, we probably won't fully implement that tonight because I have a wife and 2 children, so we're not going to do all of it. And Patrick's got a wife and 1 child, so I mean we haven't got all night to do this, but we're going to limit it to about an hour and a half for the stream, and we'll get to where we get to, and then my intention then is to complete the work once I get some more free time. But tonight's stream is literally going to be an introduction to what Spectre.Cli is and how we can go about adding it into this project. So anything you wanted to add to that, Patrick, before we get started?
No, perfect.
So what I should point out before we do this is that there's a lot of firsts going on in this stream. Patrick and I have spent the last 45 minutes or so just trying to get him to appear in that little window up there, whatever it is over there. We spent the last 45 minutes getting him up there. It all worked perfectly last night, but we've come to it today and it wasn't working so well. So that's the first, and Patrick's up there and it's working. The second first is that we're going to attempt to do this over a live share connection within Visual Studio Code. So for those of you who don't know what that is, the concept is amazing. So what we've done is we've established a live share connection between my Visual Studio Code instance and an instance of Visual Studio Code that's running on Patrick's machine in his office. And what should happen is that any files or folders that I open in my Visual Studio Code instance, Patrick will be able to see that in his one, and then he'll also be able to edit that file at the same time as I am. So rather than me simply regurgitating what Patrick is telling me to do, he'll be able to step in and tell me what I'm doing wrong and to manually edit the code at the same time. So hopefully that's all going to live up to expectations as well. And in the tests that we've done so far, it has, and it's worked really well. So that's it. So we're going to get started with not directly with the source code for Git Release Manager, but Patrick's created a very quick console application just to show how Spectre.Cli works. So let's just jump in. As normal, if there are any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat window that you've got open here, and I will attempt to see those coming through, and then I'll probably defer them all to Patrick to answer, because it's his tool. So let's get started. So this application you created, Patrick, what is it and what does it do?
It's a very, very simple console application that does nothing at all. It just mimics the .NET tool experience, not the whole experience, just a subset of the commands. So if you run the executable in the bin,
I thought it was in this folder.
Yeah, net462, I think.
So where are we? The fake bin net. Did we build it? I thought we built it before we came on the show.
Yeah.
Let's just see what's going on here. Nothing worked. Bin. Oh, debug. I missed the debug folder. That was my mistake. So bin debug net462 and then a fake exe. That is that. So currently, if I just run that executable, it's showing me the help documentation that the Spectre.Cli is outputting, correct?
Yeah, correct. So here you see it displays pretty much a standard CLI experience. I added some more things, but it's actually more about how you implement commands and how you compose commands in your application.
Mm-hmm.
But I also added like colorization and suggestions and things like that. You can try writing something like fake.net.
Mm-hmm. So fake.net. Add, yep. And run that.
-- help maybe. So here you see subcommands, nothing unusual, and you can write. It requires an argument project, so you can write fake.net add foo.
Yep.
Reference bar.
Yep.
Enter. So nothing strange there.
Okay.
But if we go to the source code,
Yep. Just in program.cs?
Yeah, program.cs is a perfect place to start. So just let me. As you can see, we're configuring the system, the command application, by adding branches and commands.
Okay.
And the nice thing about this is that it's enforced by the type system. So the add reference command, if you go to that class, for example, you will see that it implements from async command add reference settings. And if you go to the add reference settings, you can see that it implements the add settings. So if you go back to the program.cs, you can see that to add a command under add, which is a branch for the add settings, you need to implement a command whose settings inherit from its parent.
Gotcha. Yep.
So you can add as many levels as you want to. But the good thing is that you can move those commands around. So you could, can I edit this?
You should be able to, yeah.
Yeah. So you can move it here and do like this, because the root has no, there's no enforced settings type in the root, for example. And if we would run this now, we would have a new root command called reference. So it's in what I'm trying to demo. I literally prepared nothing else but this small demo. Is that it's really easy to compose your application when you have a lot of commands, or if you're experimenting. How should the CLI experience? What should the CLI experience be like? And it's also really easy to unit test, because each command is contains everything that the command is needed.
Yeah.
So yeah, and yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Cool.
There's a lot of small things as well, like support for type converters for property for options and arguments, and default values and stuff like that you expect from a. But started like an experiment, and I really like to work with it when I write a CLI application. So at least for me, it simplifies something.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And it was a fun project. So
that's how the best ones start, though, isn't it? It's a need that you have, and ultimately, in this instance, it's something that you've made available to other people. And I know that there's at least others. I know, for example, Alistair on the Crete team, he's also using Spectre.Cli for some of his projects. So it's definitely being used, and people are exercising it. So
yeah, two people.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You're maybe being. Let's have a look, shall we? Let's see how many. Let's go to Spectre.Cli on NuGet and see how many times it's been.
Maybe 10 times.
Almost 3,000 downloads. So that's more than just yourself and Alistair, I think.
It might be my CI process for like 2,900 downloads.
Okay, so in theory, we should be able to. So based on what you said there, where we have this kind of top level of adding the commands in, or adding the branches in to start with, we should quite quickly be able to replicate the top level commands that are inside Git Release Manager to date, and start exposing those as options at the command line. So I'm going to open another folder within Visual Studio Code. Now, what I don't know is whether that's going to drop your connection to this thing here. So let's give it a try, and if we need to recreate it, then we can. So I'm just going to go up to where the Git Release Manager code lives, which is not in that folder. So Git Tools, Git Release Manager. Let's just go into, let's just go into this top level one. So hopefully that has remembered your session, which it hasn't. Have you been disconnected, Patrick?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got disconnected.
So let's go over here. Whoa, where did you go? Oh, it's all going wrong in this stream now. What's happening here? No, we're still good. We're still good. No, we're not. That's okay. Let's put this back together. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go into. So basically, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to share a link with Patrick that I don't want you people on the stream to have, because I don't want anyone other than Patrick rewriting my source code today. So
it could be a fun experiment.
It could be, but there's also some really dodgy characters in the chat here. There's one mholo and devlead are in the chat here, so we obviously don't want them getting on into our source code today.
No,
so
that would be horrible.
That would be bad, right? So
yeah.
Let's.
Especially Martin mholo. Just kidding.
So let me just. I'm off screen at the minute, but I'm hoping to get logged into a place where I can share this password. If I get logged in, which I can't. The wonders of technology. Why are you not letting me in? Why are you not letting me log in? Okay, that's not going to work. How can I get this to you without sharing it with everyone? Thanks, Gary, for trusting me. Maurice, I would obviously trust yourself. It's the other people that are in the chat room that are being aimed at with that comment. Let's at least get it onto my clipboard so that I can start sending it somewhere. Okay, so it's copied onto my clipboard. So in theory, I have it over here. Okay, I know what I'm going to do. I am going to do this. I'm going to say and at that point we should have Patrick connected again. Yes, I did make a scene, Matthias, thank you. Here's one I made earlier. General failure while reading the stream. Hope not. I hope not. Okay, so this is the source code for the Git Release Manager tool. So as I mentioned, this is currently using a command line, the command line NuGet package. The way that it works is kind of similar to what you were sort of showing at the first level there, where there's this concept of parsing the command line argument and then attempting to match that to one of the predefined options, as they call it, or verbs, as they call it. So my understanding is what we would want to do is we would want to essentially remove that work and then start putting in Spectre.Cli to do that work for us. So where do we start? Am I literally just going to... Do you think I should just remove command line completely and remove it from the project? Or should we leave it in and put the new one in piecemeal? Or what do you think we should do?
I think we'll We should leave the command line and do this side by side, perhaps.
Okay, that's fine. So where do we start?
We might start with creating a new program. Maybe we should rename this one to program old, maybe.
Let's do that. So rename this to be old. Yeah, that's as good as one as any. And let's create a new class. New C# class called program. Okay, beautiful.
So let's start by adding the NuGet package.
Okay, yep. The NuGet package is going to be a package reference.
Yes.
So let's add a new package reference to be include, and then it's just Spectre.Cli, and the version currently, I think I saw it as 0.20, is that right?
Yes.
0.20.0.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's where to start? Let's just fire up a command app object. Maybe we need to restore references first.
.NET store, where are we? Source, and then Git release manager.
Devlid has a good point. Did you name the class? The program?
I did. The program.cs, the actual program instance? Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did do that, but yeah, thank you. So if I restore that,
it's 462. So
hold on.
Netcore app 2.
I think we might do it on. So there's two. So this is the. Maybe we should have mentioned this prior to this. So there's both a globaldotnet tool for Git release manager, and there is a full fat framework CLI. So at the minute, I will leave the. No, we
can just bump the CLI CSProid to net 462.
We can do that, I think. Is that? Yeah, why not? Do that.
Yeah. I don't think 451 is even supported anymore. Right?
I don't know. Maybe someone on the.
Devlid knows, I'm sure.
Devlid, yeah, he would know. Okay, so we have a package reference and we have that in there. Yes. Okay. So using Spectre.Cli, I'm gonna guess. And you wanted a new command app. Is that what you said?
Yeah, you need to add a public static void main.
Yes. Public static void main.
With a string array as an argument.
Args.
Yep.
So var, you were calling it an app, or does it matter, or is there a convention?
No. App, Gary, banana, I don't know.
Oh, command app, sorry, not app, command. New command app. ER.
I think you need to restart OmniSharp.
I can do that. Okay.
Yeah, just run app.run, perhaps, and send the args. It requires the arguments like that.
Okay.
So just try to run it.
So do I want to build it, or yeah, we will. So there's a cake build for obviously myself and Patrick are maintainers of the cake project, so everything we build pretty much has a cake build associated with it. So I'm just going to spin that up and build this project, and hopefully it will then be executable. And then in the chat room, Maurice is saying .NET 4.5.1 support for .NET 4.5.1 on all operating systems ended 2016. Beautiful. So not that long ago then. We're only talking 3 years. Program has more than one entry point. Why does it have more than one entry point? Because we haven't saved the file, maybe. What is in the...
So doesn't OmniSharp have support to just build the application from code? I'm not. I don't use code much for
That's a good
for
question.
C#.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I can just run this individual build task, which would you'll need to exclude. Why would I need to exclude it, Kim? I don't understand why I would need to exclude it. Because I renamed the. It doesn't have. It's not called program.cs anymore, so I'm confused as to why. I mean, we can certainly do that. But let's just see. Otherwise, it thinks there are 2 entry points. Oh, because it's a static void, you mean? Oh, I see what you're saying. Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
Okay, so let's delete that then. Move to recycle then. Let's just... It's all in Git, so I mean, we can get it back. That's not a problem. So, I'm going to
Yeah, it's not a class name. That's it's actually the method signature of the main.
So now it's complaining that this can't find this. So have I done something else silly? We will also need to put it. I'm confused. Something's happened and I don't understand what's going on. Give me 1 second to... CD, git tools.
Oh yeah, the program old file. It's still in the csproj.
Ah, you see, that's the downside of being in... Oh, would it? I thought I'd modified it to the new project format, so that shouldn't be necessary, but it's also possible that I haven't done that. Let me just bring up a visual tool to see what's going on with the... I'm missing a file that I'm expecting to be there. Okay, back to Visual Studio Code. So, so what we're saying in the... So you're saying in this one that...
No, it looks correct actually. I'm not sure. I just saw the error message in
I think what's going
Git
on
Release Manager.
is
Yeah.
I was attempting to do it just on a single project, but in order for it all to work, I think I'm going to need to do all of them. So let's just try that build one more time. Because there's actually two projects. So I'd added the Spectre.Cli into the Git Release Manager CLI, but I hadn't added it into the tool. So I think the error was coming from there, I hope. Let's see if it builds this time. Don't forget to update the .NET version. I thought I did that. I'd done that, hadn't I? Maurice, tell me I'd done that.
Yeah.
Oh, that was better. He says. Come on. There we go. Okay. Thermal review the tasks, fine. So in theory now, in the, where are we? We are in Git Release Manager. So in the source folder, in Git Release Manager, CLI, bin,
Yeah, so you should be able to
debug.
can you just run .NET Run here
Just from the root
in
folder?
the CLI folder? No, from the CLI folder.
CD,
Source Git Release Manager CLI.
into Git Release Manager. Oh no, source. Oh no, CD and source.
Oh, no, directly. No, directly in the. Sorry.
.NET Run.
Yeah.
No, because there are two projects in there. So let's do that one. We just told it which project to run. Specify which project file to use because, right? I've told you. Do I need to give it a name?
Dash P.
Of course. Unable to run your project target must.
And specify framework, just a
Framework, which one?
Net 462, maybe.
Net 462. Hold on.
Or Net Core App 2.1.
Yeah. Okay, so all of this is not actually what we're trying to do today. But let's Net Core App 2.1.
Okay, perfect. That's from.
So this is your output. So no commands have been configured is what you're expecting, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
Okay, right. So going back to program.cs, we have defined an app, and we're running the app, passing in the arguments that we're passing in, and no commands have been configured. So we need to configure some commands.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the same file, what commands are we recreating?
So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 top level commands. Create, add, asset, close, publish. So, I mean, I don't know how you want to approach it. We could either try and add in all the top level ones, but not have it actually run any code, but just get the structure of the CLI defined, and then start to implement the arguments for each one of those as we go. So does that make sense to define all the top level commands and then drill down into them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
so which one do you want to start?
Let's start at the top. So the first one is create.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So let's create a new class called Crete command.
Okay. So
do you want me to drive?
You can do. I'll get your class. So there's a create command class just been created.
Perfect. I was actually thinking we just put it in the same file and we refactor it out later.
Sure.
So I'm just gonna go ahead and delete that one. So let's create a create command class and create settings. And create settings inherit from command settings, which is a base type. And the create command, it implements command create settings in this case.
Okay.
And then we need to implement the abstract methods on the command class, which is auto completed. So each command wants you to return a integer. That's just the result code that you want to return back to the shell that started your program. So let's just return 0 for now, like that.
So normally a zero return code is everything went fine, everything succeeded successfully. Yep.
Yeah. And if you're doing async work, you can always use the async command that
returns a task event then. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, task event, like that. But okay, so let's configure the application. So here we just call the configure method on the command app instance, and we get a lambda, which I call config here, which is the, can you hover, configurator. So I just write config, add command, and create command. I'm going to call that one create, like that.
Yep.
So now if we run everything, I'm not sure if I can. There. We should get some kind of, no?
There is no implicit reference conversion from create settings to Spectre.Cli command settings.
That should work. There's a lot of lag in the terminal for some reason.
Well, let's maybe do... I'd sort of assumed that the run would do a build, but let's do it again. .NET build release manager tool. And then run it. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. So now we've got a new command create, and if we run that one.
So that would be here, and then just pass the word create in.
Yeah.
Then
nothing
doesn't
happens.
return anything, because it's just returning the exit code, which is 0, and didn't actually do anything.
Yeah, exactly. So
Could just run and it'll do an implicit. Yeah, well, that's what I tried, Matthias, but it didn't work. So, I'm not sure what's happening there. But I mean, I'm happy to do a build and then do the run. So one question that I had then, Patrick. So I know you can't see this, but in the PowerShell window I've just opened up, my create command in the existing Git Release Manager CLI has the verb, which is create, and then a description of what that's doing. So currently in the output that we had before, there is command create, but there's no description associated with it. So how do I get something to appear here, or can I get something to appear there as a kind of a top level a description of what that command is and what it does?
yeah, absolutely. So you need to import the component model namespace.
So using system.component model, yep.
Yeah, and then add a description attribute to the command.
So the create command itself,
yeah,
has a description attribute. Okay.
Yeah, and
open parentheses, and then it's just a string.
Correct.
Okay, so let me grab the description in a minute. So let's pull that in. I'm just going to paste that in there. Okay. So now if I go back and build that one more time, and then let's run without the create command and see what we get. Okay, perfect. So creates a draft release notes from a milestone. Beautiful. Okay.
So try and misspell create. So remove the E from create.
Remove the E from the end or the middle?
No, we never passed the create command. But if you write create now, it should invoke the command.
Yep.
And just remove the E from the create.
Oh, look at that.
You get that?
Okay.
Yeah. So I put a lot of time into that kind of stuff, like a lot of colors and fancy stuff.
So that's similar to the one that springs to mind there is the Git CLI. So when you do a Git push but you misspell Git push, it'll give you a suggestion that, is this what you meant? Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, and the layout is cut off from Rust tooling.
Okay, cool.
Which I really like. But I think it's very clear.
So under the hood then, what's that doing then? So that's just doing a kind of a fuzzy search on what you typed against the commands that are defined? Or
I calculate the Levenstein distance between all the available commands and the closest command in the command tree.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you had a command that's even closer than create, like okay, create is a bad example, but if you had a command that's called create without an E, and one and you wrote great instead, it will suggest the create without the E instead of create. Gotcha. So it always chooses the closest one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to suggest something then. So I'm going to start. Let's say I want to add in the add asset command now. So I'm going to attempt to do what you just did with your example and see if I can get it to work. Okay. So I want an add asset command. So what you did was you created two classes. One which was the public sealed class, and that's going to be the add asset command.
Actually, can I suggest something? I think it would be nicer if you had a add and then asset instead of a add asset. Because then in theory you could use the same thing for add label or add.
So
But we want to keep it backwards compatible.
That's what was going through my head. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, but in this first implementation, I think I would like to be as backwards compatible as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I will actually show you later how we can do this without changing, with just changing one line of code.
Okay. So so let's implement it as add asset, and then we can see how we can then refactor that for later. Okay. So we've got the add asset command. So you had that coming from command, and we're going to need an add asset settings class that we don't have yet. And we can do that, and then that has an override for int, which is execute, and that one, and you had that as public, and then at the minute we'll just return a 0 again. And then we need our add asset settings class. So this is going to be a public sealed again. Public sealed add settings class, add asset settings, and that is going to come from command settings, and that's just empty at the minute. So that's what we would fill with the available settings once we know what they are.
Yeah.
That wants to be a class. I forgot the word class. Okay, so that's there, and then if I do back to my command up here, and I do a description again, and I go back to my PowerShell window and I say add an asset to an existing release. I love my description. It fully explains exactly what I'm meant to do. Okay.
Crystal clear.
Absolutely. So I've created a command class and this create settings, but I need to add that into this configure again. I need to add a new command into that. So I'm just going to go back. I'm going to assume I'm going back to here, and this is going to be another add command, and that is going to be add asset command, and that is going to have an entry point which is just add asset or assets. Which one did I have? Add asset singular.
Yeah.
Okay. So in theory, if I go ahead and build that again, and then there's a couple of questions that we're going to take. So let's just run that just to see if what I added makes sense. So we've now got two commands. One is create and one is add asset. Now I notice that the description has lost, this is me being a slightly anally retentive now, but it's omitted the full stop that I put at the end of the description in the output there. Is that doing that deliberately?
Yeah.
You don't like a full
Just
stop at the end?
Yeah, it's very opinionated. I mean, you can always send a pull request to make it configurable.
I'm just looking again at the PowerShell output from the original command, and I'm not even consistent. So some of them have a full stop at the end of the description, and some of them don't. So
and now it's consistent.
I obviously don't have a clear one way or the other. So the first question was that I saw was from Maurice there. So if we were to run it with Crete, so the question was, what if you type Crete? Let's see what that does then. So yeah, it's still going to come back with did you mean create? So that, what did you call that?
What?
What did you call the process that you are running? The link of the
Levenstein distance. You calculate the distance between two strings, and I think the distance is 2 or 3. So if you just put CRE, for example, I think it won't even show up.
Okay, so CRE there, no such.
Just say no such. Yeah.
In the same way that
because
if I did Bob, it's not going to find something that matches that. Okay.
Yeah, because the distance is so large that it's virtually could be anything.
So the question that Kim in the chat room has there is this settings class needed? So if the command, so I'm guessing the question really is if this command doesn't have any settings and it was just do we need it when we define the command up here? Is there one that doesn't take a settings? Or does it kind of assume
no,
that it always has it?
It's actually required because the settings is kind of central. Maybe I can show you better.
Mm-hmm.
Can I take over the keyboard?
Sure, go for it.
So, if we had a branch, for example, to add asset settings. Let's use that one since we have it.
Mm-hmm.
Want to add the settings class, for example, here is required to enforce that subsequent commands fulfill the previous command. So we require some settings kind of central in the whole thing. You could always do something like mediator I've done, like a unit class or something like that. That just you expose a command without the argument if you don't need any arguments for some reason.
Yeah.
And just seal this override in the command base class and have a new method with just the context. For example, if I'm not sure if I understand completely, but I assume I understand.
So maybe Kim, if you want to show an example in the chat of what you would what you'd want to achieve at the command line, and we can address that as a question going forward.
Yeah, that's better. Anyway, I was going to take this opportunity to show that you can the composability.
Mm-hmm.
So if we run this command again.
So okay, let's do a build again, just to make sure.
Yep.
And then if I do that one, the branch add does not define any commands.
Oh, because it doesn't.
Oh, I see. It was still on console. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if we do add, then I'm assuming that they're going to see that there's a sub-command of add that is asset. Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Exactly. So it's using the same commands and settings that we defined previously, but I see what you're saying. So I think
so if you have a level, if you have a tree of commands that's 4 levels deep for some reason, as long as the types, the setting type can be inferred in the command class, you can move those commands around as you like and experimenting. What do I want my CLI experience to be like?
Yep.
So, for example, we could,
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you have a base class, like if you had asset settings that add assets settings inherit from as part of the branch we create, that would be arguments for that branch as well. Which now we close the Spectre.Cli application, but perhaps I can show later if it comes up.
Yep. So there's a couple of questions. One from Maurice. Would it be possible to add an alias for a command, or would that require an extra add command? So an alias being, I'm trying to think of an example. You're saying like A instead of add. Is that what you're asking there? And then Kim's coming back. I don't really have any examples, but it's pretty much if there is a command that doesn't need any arguments, in that case, I wouldn't think there would be a need to have a settings class. So maybe an example of that if I do here.
Yeah, but
again, Patrick,
then you could just create empty settings and an empty command or something like that. abstract that you can even put it into the library, actually.
I see what you're saying, Kim. So, in terms of what I have, I don't have any commands for Git Release Manager that don't have a setting to pass in. Pretty much everything always has at least one setting. You don't necessarily need to use it, but it is there. So an example that I'm showing in the stream here is that there's always a log file path. For every command, there is where you want to output the text of the command to. And there's also a target directory for where Git Release Manager is targeting. So in the way that it was set up previously, those were in a base settings class that all of the options in command line package came from. So they were built up from there. So I'm assuming that's similar to what you've just described, Patrick, where you can have a base settings class or an abstract class, and then all the settings classes can derive from those ones.
Yeah, absolutely. That was part of what I was explaining. It's really difficult without showing any code.
No, absolutely. Yeah,
yes.
no, understood. So to answer Kim's question, as of right now, if you did have a command that didn't have any settings, you would need to have an empty settings class that didn't have anything in it. But it would need to be there.
Yeah.
And the follow-up question from Maurice there is, if you wanted to have a command that was install, but for also inst to work, would that be a separate command, or is it possible to have both install and inst run the same command?
Yeah, absolutely. You could declare it both as inst and install.
So an example up here. So you're saying here in the create command, you can say.
Oh no, you have to define it twice in that case.
So you would
need to add it twice.
So to answer his, so it's not. I'm going to change this. So this would be install, and then it would literally be that again for inst.
Yeah. But
okay.
What he's asking for is an alias.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing is that the things that exist in this library is things that I've had a use for.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't added it, but it should be fairly easy to add alias support for commands.
So in theory, if that were to go ahead, that could in theory be another argument here. Not argument, attribute maybe?
No.
No?
No, because that's part of the configuration phase. So that would probably be part of like an optional parameter or a params string aliases.
So up here, then maybe a string array of additional aliases for the add command. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Because we want to separate the configuration from the command definitions.
Makes sense. Okay, so where we're at just now is we have at least a top level implementation of, say, 2 of the commands. So another one is, let's do the init command, and then we'll look at the implementation of the init command with some settings. Okay, because it has no other settings other than the base settings. So we'll use that one to build up the other ones because they'll all come from there. Yeah. So let's do this process again. So this time around, I'm just going to copy these 2 things that we had before. So I'm going to copy these 2. And I'm going to put this. That clearly didn't do what I wanted it to do. Paste. Nope. My ability to copy and paste seems to be degraded today. Let's try this again. Paste. There we go. So this is not the add asset anymore. This is going to be init, and we're going to have the init command that takes the settings that is init, and then the description is going to be creates a sample YAML file. And is this just telling me that it's not being used, or what? Oh, it's here. Doesn't class here. There we go. And then back up into our configure section, we can add another command, config.add command, and command init command with the init. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just check to make sure that that is working. Let's take that off. If we run that, we should have now, I think, 4 commands, but it's really only top 3 that were. So, okay, so we've now got init, and I want, again, you can't see the PowerShell window without looking at the stream, but there currently, when you're running the init command, there are 4 settings or 4 arguments that you can pass into that command. One is the target directory, one is a log file path, one is help, but I think we already have that based on the constructed the makeup of Spectre.Cli. We already have the help one, and then there's another one that is version, that displays the current version number of the executable. So that it's common to all of them. So there's at least 3 I think that we need to add: target directory, log file path, and version. So what do we do next then?
Let's create a shared base class for the settings then.
Okay. So public sealed class base settings.
Yeah.
And does that come from command settings as well?
Yeah.
So that one will come from command settings, and then we will change init settings to come from base settings.
Correct.
Okay. So then we've got base settings. Oh. Can't derive from a sealed, so that one wants to be abstract then, correct?
Yeah, it needs to be abstract.
Okay, and then in here, we're suggesting that we put some properties, and they flow through as arguments into the command line.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one was a directory path. So I'm going to go with string.
Yep.
And I'm going to call that target directory with a public getter and setter.
Yeah, perfect. And then you need to add an attribute as well.
To the property.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's called command option.
Command option. Yep.
And then what did the original parameter look like?
In terms of the description, you mean, or?
No, in terms of what is the short option name and long option name and the parameter name.
So let me put this in here so you can see it.
So perfect.
So that's what was output previously. So it's -d and -- target directory.
Okay, and then you write it's a string command option, the value.
Yep.
And you -d.
-d.
Pipe. -- target directory. Actually, no space between them.
So no space here, no space there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can add an space, and then a smaller than sign, and path with big letters, for example, and less than. sign.
Like this, you mean?
Greater than, sorry. And no spaces as well between path.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Okay, yep.
Yeah, so that's the signature. And the path part isn't required, but you will get nicer messages if it's omitted.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Like the parameter path for, it's missing.
I get you. Okay,
so that's everything you need to do with that one. And
okay. So then
you wanted the log file.
A log file path, yeah. So if we do pop again, string log file path. So then another attribute, command option, and then that was -l pipe -- log file path, and then so again path, yeah. And then version. So version.
Version. Just a boolean.
Just a what, sorry?
A bool.
Why a bool?
Because it's lag.
Yes. Sorry, I see. Yes, absolutely. No, I see where you're going now. Bool version, and so that would be command option, and then that was just -- version, so it doesn't have a short one. I don't know why I don't have a short one. I think I might use -v for something else. So can I just do -- version without the type?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
That's it. Of course, now we don't want to implement version in every command. For example, since that has that's functionality that you want to share between each command. If you pass the version. Personally, I think that version should be an argument to the application itself instead of to each
command. I see what you're saying. Okay.
But you want to keep it backwards compatible, so.
I do, but let's do this so that I remember about that, and let's do move to higher level.
Yeah. And there's actually a concept of a root command in Spectre.Cli.
Okay.
So when you define the command application, there's actually can I drive?
Sure. Yeah.
You can actually specify a root command like this, and if no command is specified, that one will be executed.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
So if you want to rework the I have a PR for Cake where we rewrote the CLI for Cake. So I have a legacy command here that replicates how it worked before and uses the same parser and everything.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. But if you specify a command, it will actually use the new one.
Gotcha.
So that's one. And you also have support for dependency injection to your commands by registering a type registrar.
Okay.
Registrar. So if you need dependency injection, you can set up a container, and when your commands are created, it will inject all dependencies.
So does Spectre.Cli define what container needs to be used, or you're in control of that?
Now there's an abstraction, so it's more or less a type resolver. So you have to implement the details yourself, but it's 10 lines of code for autofac, for example.
Okay.
So it's no big deal.
sounds good.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Sorry.
no, it's fine. So we have those settings classes. So in theory, then, if I go and build this again,
Mhm.
and I run it with the init command, it should now show me the. Oh no, I need the help. I would need to run
Yeah.
init-help.
Great.
Okay, so what do we see now?
You're seeing the .NET run command for some
I
reason.
am seeing the .NET run command.
I think you need a double dash
Oh, there is something, isn't there?
to separate init and,
I think we're right.
if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there we go. So this is the usage. So git release manager.dll init, and then options. The options are so the help, which is what we're using, target directory and path, log file path and path, and version. Okay, that looks good. That looks good.
Mhm.
So, how about we attempt to pass this to the actual current implementation in Git Release Manager CLI?
That sounds good.
Okay, so if we go back,
Finally, some code.
finally some code, yeah. But so I don't think any of this was wasted by any means. So this is we've shown how you define the commands and how they they can be put together, and we've shown a base class that other ones can derive from. So where up here I was deriving from command settings, pretty much all of these, in the way it's written, are going to want to come from base settings. So let's just change that while we remember, so that they all get those. Yep. And then, if I go over here and look at what we deleted, again, you probably can't see this pattern, but if we go and look at the program.cs that we deleted, then the init command currently goes to a function called create sample config file. There's an interesting question for you from Kim. Does Spectre support localization for the description attribute?
No.
Okay.
But I would love to implement it if I find need for it, or accept a PR for it.
So I've done something similar for Chocolatey actually. It has a attribute you can define that will look at the current language that it's running on, and then it will look for a regex that matches that, and then it will pull a description into the what's output on command line.
Yeah,
so I can
that would be an elegant solution to have a localizable description attribute. That's just take
I think that's
identifier.
exactly what I called it.
Okay. Great minds.
I'm saying I did it. I think I unashamedly borrowed it from somewhere on the internet, I think. So I can definitely point you towards that. In fact, let's just make sure I'm not lying. So
I'm sure you're not.
GitHub Chocolatey. See if I can find it quickly here. Source Chocolatey attributes, localized description attribute. That then uses, so it's just using the resource manager, and then it's getting the key that's passed in. So localized, where do I use that? Copy. So in theory, you could use something similar, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then where I do that is in here. So then it's just passing in the key of the resource from the regex that you want to pull out, and then that is then mapped to whatever it's being used. So
yeah, that's very Elegant.
So Kim's very good at raising PRs for things around localization. He's been responsible for a lot of the localization stuff in Chocolate GUI. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kim doesn't create a PR for Spectre.Cli.
No pressure.
What he should do first, though, is finish the PR that he's got for Chocolate GUI, which is this one. Yes, it's still a work in progress. So this is Kim here. He's been very busy on Chocolate GUI recently. So anyway, coming back to this one, what were we doing? We were implementing. So what we have in GitLab Manager, we have a. What did I say it was called? I've lost my train of thought now. It was called
Crete
sample config file.
Yeah.
So copy that and let's find it. See where that lives. It should be in here. Oh no, I bet you it's not. I bet you.
We removed it. I think.
I think it's in the root of this program.cs. Because some of the simple things are just directly in the program.cs. It was never actually moved off into the shared library. Can I search this? Find and find. Let's just follow this. So, let's see what the code was. So the code is probably really simple. Create sample config.
Configure logging with that method as well.
Yep. Configure logging. Oh, it was there. Find previous. That's not going to be easy, so let's just cheat a little bit. Tools, GitHub Manager, source, and in here, and then in here, and then configure logging. Is here. I probably don't have. We might have bought a lot of stuff from here.
Yeah. I was thinking, since that is something that every command is doing, perhaps we should create a base command as well.
Okay. Do you want to drive?
Sure.
Which line are you going to be at so I can bring it up? I see you on line 39.
Yeah. So, where did we have the base settings? Are you scrolling as well?
I didn't know if you could scroll.
Oh yeah, I can.
Okay, I'll leave you to scroll then.
I think.
Or you're typing now. I think you're further down than I can see. You're on a big screen, right? So you can see lots of stuff, as opposed to 15 lines, I think.
Okay, so you need to scroll for me.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think you can, in the live share part of Visual Studio Code, there's a participants panel. I think you can choose follow Patrick.
Follow to the side. Follow to the side. Let's see what that does. Oh no, I don't want that. Let's just stick with what so I can see what line you're on. So that's fine. Let's go with that.
So let's create a base command.
Oh, I see what you're doing now. Okay.
something like that. And then we I wish I thought this through, but let's let's do it anyway. Isn't that the override integer? I don't know. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, this is not very pretty, but it will.
Why is this jumping around so much? Let's see if I can do that.
I'll make that abstract. So here we have now we have a base command where we can do stuff in the execute method, and I just create a new one. We can actually seal this one, seal this override like that, and it will just call the execute command. So we need to override the execute command method instead.
So in theory, we could then also have where did that go? We could do more magic before.
No, that should be call Jedi Council. Yeah,
but,
exactly.
So we could have because I think what was attempting to do here was this configure logging would be let's just maybe put this in. So this would be as example configure logging.
Yeah.
And then after here we could do tidy up or something, but then the heart of this specific command is done within that execute command method. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. So in this scenario,
there are probably other way we can solve this, but the pressure is too high, man.
No, I this makes sense to me. I mean, this is because in the way that it's currently implemented, yes, it's done in a probably a not particularly nice way, in that it just calls configure logging within every single command. So there's repetition of the code base there. So what we have here makes perfect sense. So let's maybe grab this then, and let's put this down here and see what's broken.
You should probably put that method inside the base command class.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
So no, you're right. So base command class. This keeps jumping. Are you scrolling and I'm scrolling? Because it seems to keep jumping. I don't know if that's because...
Yeah, I was scrolling.
Okay. I was just curious as to whether that's what's causing the problem or not. So I've already lost the base command, so it's further down. Stop jumping. Why?
No, I'm not doing anything.
But what's going on there? That's really annoying. What's LiveShare doing? That it really wants me to do something that returns 0, and I don't understand what it wants me to do.
But try unfollowing me.
Oh, I bet you that's what it is.
Because I'm following you now, so perhaps it's like.
Okay, so that's what it's doing.
Ping pong.
So in this here, in that base command, we will then have this one, right? So that needs a generic of some description. That will need system.io. That will resolve all of those. As you can see, I'm coding directly against system.io here. There's no file system abstraction or anything like that. that's just going to be system, yada yada yada, logger. We're not going to have a logger. Oh, that's in core, so we can use that one. Beautiful. And we need a write log entry, which is this one here. Copy. Seriously, my ability to copy paste is that's just a system of globalization. Okay, so is that all of there? So what is that missing? Log. Oh, log's not a global variable, is it? I bet it is. It's right there, look. It's a string builder. What else would it be? What else would it be other than a string builder defined at the top of the class? Let's. Everyone watching out there, don't do this ever. Just do things properly. This is fine. So we now have.
You can actually put that in the base command. It doesn't need to be in program.
Oh, now it doesn't either. You know, you're right. Let's do that then.
And you can make it not static as well.
So that's in our base command.
It doesn't really matter, but
No, that makes sense.
But I think you should move it to the base command.
So that's log. So why can you use because this doesn't need to be stuck. Right. Okay. So now we're doing all that stuff. You were going to say something? Sorry.
You should remove return from execute command as well.
Remove the return
in the base. Up in the execute method.
Oh, here you mean? No. I don't follow. Sorry.
Before do more magic.
Mm-hmm.
Execute command. You need to return the value from execute command.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So in terms of what we've got so far, then we've now got a base command that is always going to do the configure logging portion of the work, which is good. Mm-hmm. And then what we wanted to do then was run this configuration provider write sample. So this is the part that we still need. And then at run arg, so we can kind of still run this.
I'm very curious to see if this compiles at all.
Well, right now it won't. Let's see where we get to. So the first thing we want to do is we want to find the init command and we want to implement this execute command in the base command, correct?
Yeah.
So the init command was here. So this is no longer using command, this is going to use base command.
Yeah, and just rename it to execute command.
Rename this to execute command. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then cannot change access modifiers when overriding. What's that?
Oh yeah, protected. You need to change it from public to protected. The execute command. Because I think I made it protected.
You did. So this one's to be public.
Or the other way around. But never mind.
Well, which makes more sense? Do we want to limit? I guess we probably do we?
Yeah, we want to make sure that the execute method is called, which in turn calls the execute command.
Yeah, but we don't want to further allow it to be manipulated, is what I'm getting at.
No.
So I think this makes sense. Okay, so in here, this is where we would put the configuration provider, blah blah blah. And then if all that works, it's going to return 0. So configuration provider, where does that come from? Using, that's just in the sub. So this target directory is on our settings class. We'll have a target directory, and if that's not provided, then we need to give it the what's file system. Where's that defined? Oh, there is some sort of abstraction going on. Okay. So whereas this is defined at the highest level in the existing code. So where will we best put that?
In the base command, probably.
In the base command as well, yes.
Since it's global in the original.
It's global in the original, yeah. Private file system, new file system needs...
No, private file system, like it was. And since you need it in the init command, maybe you need to add a property getter to it to make it protected.
I don't think it's a file system. No, why is that? Are you missing a using directory? Oh yeah, okay.
It's in the main method.
Sorry, I missed what you said there because I was frantically trying to decide what was happening there. So, you said a getter on this?
Yeah, on the file system. Just, yeah, perfect. And get set and... You can just add a
private one as well, so this will be a public. Yeah?
Yeah, or protected perhaps.
Protected, file system.
Can I make a change?
Sure, go for it.
Can do like...
Is this some of the new syntax? I haven't got my head into some of this new stuff yet.
I think it's like that. I'm always mixing them up.
So let me just think about what's going on there. So
we define a file system property that's protected, so only init command can reach it, and then we assign it to new file system.
It's this part here. So this is in what, C#7? Just when this?
Yeah, I think so. It's a initializer syntax. I'm not sure what it's called, to be honest.
But that's just syntactic sugar over private member field and then returning it in the getter. And
yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So it's the same as assigning it to a field or assign it in the constructor.
Okay, so that file system that I had somewhere is not going to work anymore because
you just change it to with a big F.
Yeah, I'm trying to find where it went.
It's if you scroll up.
Oh,
in the
here,
init command.
It was
init command. Right sample.
Okay. Matthias is saying, but it's read only, which saves some code.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree. So we have a base command that has the log and the file system. It's now executing the configure logging, and then we then have an overridden execute command that actually does what it's meant to do, which is the writing the sample file. So in theory, this should do something. Do we think?
Yeah, it should. I mean, if it compiles, then we just push it to Git and publish a new release.
So
no,
I have a ctemp folder. So let's build it, which is here, and it has errors. init subop. Oh, so I've must have a lot of code at the bottom here that we don't actually need anymore. So we don't actually want this. Oh, we have to. Oh no, we have implemented it. We have, because the init command is mapped. So init command derives from base command. Init command is mapped to the init argument. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking for the equivalent of the lambda, or not the lambda, the lambda. So the original lambda, but we've already done that. It's already done implicitly. Not, implicit's the wrong word. What I'm getting at is that in the old way of doing it, I would have had to provide a map, to point to the function to execute, but it's already done here. So that part is different, which is fine. So let's build again. Okay. So if we now do --, init, and let's just check. So we've got a help command again. Right? No.
No, what happened?
I don't know. Oh, that's the .NET build command. That's not going to work. Let's take
I
all
was
that
confused
off.
there for a while.
I was confusing myself all over the place there. Let's try the run command with the init, just to make sure that that's all working. So, if we specify -d and c temp sample.yaml, right? Let's see what it does.
Crash.
Could not find part of the path. Oh, okay.
So it's just a directory.
It's just a directory, which would make sense based on the help, because it clearly states target directory path, not a file path. So let's try that again. ctemp. See what that is. Oh, it didn't complain. Oh, look at that. We have a git release manager.yaml file, which if we open, will have YAML in it. Look at that.
Nice.
Look at that. I think we need a virtual round of applause there, people. Where's all the claps in the chat window? We need something. I need a button that has the hooray sound effect. That's what I need.
Yeah, but it was YAML, so you can't expect people to clap their hands.
Well, there is that part of it, yes. So if we do the other part, so let's not give it a target directory. So in theory, that should create one just in the root of where we are.
Mm-hmm.
So let's run that, see what happens. Didn't error. And over here, we've now got a git release manager.yaml file, which was created right now. Okay, so that works. And I really quite like the logging, or the base command that was done there. But let's do one other test.
Mm-hmm.
So the other test would be init -l c temp. So it wants a file path this time. So this is log.log. I'm so ingenious. Look at that. But that won't have anything in it because there was no output. So it might generate the file, but there's going to be nothing in it. Look at that. So I wonder if that is why. Try to think where the log file is actually useful in this context. I'm trying to think of a command that actually uses the log. But I guess we could, in theory, should it have output something? I wonder. Configure logging. So we are calling that, right?
Yeah.
We're calling that in the base command. which was here, and we're specifying the log file path, which is there. So the question becomes, does anything call write log entry? No. Where was it being used before then? But it's been a while since I've looked at this code. It's in the write actions. Which
Write action.
log.headline.
So write actions looks like some kind of sync.
Write log entry should probably be protected so commands could actually call the method.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know. No, I think this just this is only a helper method for the callback, the write actions, the default write action that it adds.
Yeah.
So write log entry isn't called by any consumer. It's probably done via the logger, I guess.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's writing an error. So let's just see if it does anything though. So in the base, in the init command, we could say, let's just test to see if it does anything. Logger dot write info. I was here. No, that's wrong. That clearly needs to be a Z.
Yeah. Good catch.
I'm sure that should have been a compilation error right there. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But so let's do that again with that. And here I was. Now we've got a log.log. Now we're cooking with gas. And now, oh look at that! There was an error as well. Can't write sample because the YAML already exists. But that's fine. So all of that works then. So this was pretty cool. What time is it? Oh, we should probably think about wrapping this up.
Yeah.
But is there anything you wanted to add to what we've done here? So, in theory, what you've given me is a template that I could then continue to implement the remaining commands that are available in Git Release Manager today. I could further extend the settings classes to have all of the options that are available. And then I could commit all of that, and then I've rewritten it from command line to Spectre.Cli, and then I could then look to rationalize the command structure that's currently there, as you suggested, which was to have a add with subcommands and so on.
Yeah, make it more exploratory for the user to perhaps.
Okay. So I'm happy with that. Are like I say, anything from a high level that you want to mention about Spectre.Cli and what you can do with it, or have you covered everything that you wanted to discuss about it?
No, I mean there are a lot more features in it. I mean just barely what's the word?
Scratch the surface.
Exactly.
So where then would be a good example for implementation that people could go and look at? So is there a example project that you're using on?
Yeah, the cake.
The rewrite.
There's the what's it called? The CLI rewrite. It's probably a good place to start if you want to see
is
a complex.
Is there a PR open for that, or?
Yeah, and I need to update that as well.
Quick rewrite CLI. So I'm just showing that in here. So this was a lot of stuff happening in here because 131 files changed, but I'm imagining a program.cs. Yeah. So in here there are. Ooh, what's that? What's the add example? Config.add example. Is that something I can add to the output to say this is how you run it?
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, might have to add some of that in.
So it's also the examples are parsed as well, so you will get a runtime error if your examples are wrong.
Oh,
so
really?
I think I got some tests for it as well.
So what you're saying is, so I know you can't see the screen. So in this example, it's saying config.add example new build.cake hyphen verbosity and quiet. So what you're saying there is that if the verbosity argument didn't exist, it would...
you will get a runtime example when it was setting up the configuration.
Ooh, okay.
So you can actually write a test that encapsulate this to keep your examples for your CLI up to date.
Okay.
And I'm also planning on this is in the backlog. I haven't gotten to it, but adding support for autocomplete.
Yes, that would be. I remember you mentioning that actually. So that's like tab completion at the.
Tab completion, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's also to export the command tree as XML or similar format. Okay. So you can actually use it in your build pipeline if you want to build documentation from the.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
From the configuration.
So this example that you have here also has an example of passing in a registrar for dependency injection. So this would be a good place to find that example as well.
Exactly.
Just scrolling down through this. Okay. So that's a good example for people to go and look at. Definitely. There was something else I was going to say there. What was that? No, I forgot what it was. Okay. So, I don't think I had anything else. Is there any questions for the people that are still in the chat? Anything that you wanted to see? Do side by side. Okay, so I'm going to change the output. Split. Apply and reload. Is there something specifically you wanted me to look at here, Matthias, or just to make it easier to read? I'm doing side by side, but I'm waiting for him to type. I like this add example. I'm going to have to go and add that back in now. I'm going to add that into what we've done today. I'm waiting to see if Matthias is going to say something else. Any other questions before we draw it to a close? Otherwise, if not, I would like to thank Patrick for coming on to the inaugural guest entry slot into the stream. So Matthias is saying it's just easier to read than viewing a whole new file. Yeah, that's true. So I thank you very much for coming on. Obviously, it's been a personal use to me because this is something I've wanted to do for a while, and I've wanted to look at Spectre.Cli and see how it actually pieces together. So from my point of view, it's been great.
It's fun.
The next stream, which is going to be next week, so I had a break last week because I was traveling, but hopefully back to a regular cadence in terms of live streams. The next one is going to be with... Is he still in the chat room? He is. So, Martin Bjorkstrom Bjorkstrom? I'm going to get that right one day. That's how I'm going to say it today. Martin is
Bjorkstrom.
Bjorkstrom. I like that. Bjorkstrom. He is another member of the Cake team, but we are going to be hacking on the. We're going to be hacking on the Visual Studio Code extension. Now, I've got it in here as hacking on the Visual Studio Code extension for Cake, but that's actually not true anymore. We've changed that. We're going to be hacking on the Visual Studio Code extension for Toplevel instead. So Martin's been very busy, and he's done a lot of work with LSP, the Language Service Provider. I think that's what the P stands for.
Language Server Protocol, I think it is.
It's a protocol? Language Service, or Language Server Protocol, yes, I think you're right.
Server.
Within Visual Studio Code. So it's a mechanism to do what can only be described as magic on source files within Visual Studio Code, and then to apply rules and checks that what you're writing actually makes sense. So what we're going to attempt to do inside Visual Studio Code is interrogate the new spec file that a Toplevel package requires. So we're going to use LSP to interrogate the new spec file to ensure that it is valid. Now, that can obviously be done with an XML schema file, so that's the first step is what we're going to do. So we're going to use the Language Server Protocol to instantiate a check on the new spec file to ensure that it matches the defined schema, but we're also going to look at going further to apply additional rules out with the schema to ensure that new spec file is valid. And if it's not valid, then hopefully we'll have some red squiggly lines underneath the section that is incorrect. And Martin's going to walk me through how all of that can be done using the Language Server Protocol that he has done a lot of work on with regard to the OmniSharp project and the Cake.Bakery project that he's been working on. So that's going to be next week. And I think that's all I had to say about that, unless I see Martin's in the chat room, so unless there's anything I said that was incorrect there, and I'm saying that you're going to do these magic things and we're not actually going to get them done. But if I haven't said anything that's out of place, then that will be next week here. Again, same time, 8 o'clock GMT, and there'll be a guy from Finland sitting up in the top right-hand corner rather than a guy from Sweden. Again,
big difference.
Big difference. And I will leave it to the audience to decide which way around that is, because I'm not going to say anything. But obviously you were first on the show, so it's clear what order of preference we go in.
Swedes win again over Finns.
But I say this on every stream, but the intention behind this live streams and GitHub Repository is if there is anything that you want to talk about on the stream, or you want to have me dig into, or any general ideas on what can be done, feel free to add a issue into this repository. I know hacking on Visual Studio Code extensions was certainly something that's come up in the past. So this one that was Kim's one that he created was for creating a new Visual Studio Code extension. So I have an idea about what I want to do for that one. I have an idea for a new extension that I want to create. So it may make sense to do some of what's discussed in this issue as a separate extension, but at least one of the things that was mentioned here was the language server from Kim. So we're going to do that in the Toplevel extension, and then we can look at creating a new extension with standalone commands and so on in a different stream. So that's all I have. So I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you again, Patrick. I will let you get away. And yeah, thank you for coming on. And I hope this was good for you too. I know I got a lot out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Good. Good.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. And everyone in the chat room, thank you for coming. And we'll see you all soon, hopefully. Bye bye.